Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, Pat and James discuss the ongoing tensions between the US and Canada prompted by cruel and unhinged behavior by Donald Trump, and what this may mean for creatives. Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
Some serious shit is going down in the US that's
Indeed.
impacting everybody.
I think so.
And so we are now in this limbo where the Trump tariffs on Canada and Mexico are suspended.
Hmm.
It could come back. Who knows? Sounds like Canada and Mexico pretty easily outthought Trump and said, we'll do what we're already doing anyway. How about that? But so there you go. But I was wondering, when this was going down and really, really getting very serious, were you going to be impacted by these tariffs? If so, in what ways?
Well, I was wondering the exact same thing because I didn't know. I didn't know if tariffs were just on goods or if they were on goods and services.
Uh-huh.
I had to look stuff up, and I did. And my sense is that there's more than one thing going on, of course. So I have lots of American clients. They're not all based in America, but many of them are. And so if they had to pay a tariff on my services, they would go to a US editor. I'm not
Mhm.
special enough for somebody to pay an extra 25% to work with me. So, um, so that led me to think a few things. One was that although tariffs apply strictly to goods in the current trade agreements between
Mhm.
Canada and the US, there is room for that to change, potentially. I don't know how they can control services in the way that they control goods because there is no physical object crossing a border. So,
Yeah.
it might not be controllable to that degree. I might not be, I might have nothing to concern
Mhm.
myself with. However, it has changed the zeitgeist in this country for sure.
Mhm.
There is, and just for anybody who's not familiar with the situation, I'm Canadian, James is American.
Mhm.
So when I say this country, I'm talking about Canada. And the zeitgeist has been that, Americans are, they're a big country. They've got a lot of fun people in there. They sell booze in the supermarkets, which we don't do in Canada, or not in most of them. Um,
Mhm.
their minimum wage is ridiculously low in most of the states. We have thoughts
Mhm.
like, and everybody's got different thoughts. One of the big ones is around their lack of gun control. It can be dangerous down there. You don't want to
Mhm.
do a fender bender on a highway in LA because you get shot in the back 6 times, like happened to a friend of my little brother's when he was a teenager. Um, so there are thoughts for sure about how we're different, but the main difference is that if you look at a map, Canada is Canada and the US is the US. We're not actually similar because we might have similar social aspects, but we're not, and we both speak English, but we are not the same country.
No.
And
And just sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, no
really,
worries.
really quick, anybody who goes up to Montreal, Quebec, which is where I generally go because it's closer, but I would assume all of Canada,
Mhm.
just going into a gas station and a mini mart, you're instantly going to recognize that this is not the US, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There is no doubt that we are talking about two different countries. And
absolutely.
sometimes I think that gets lost because there is such social connection and there's so many Canadian actors and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it's easy to lose that. I mean, and honestly, if you did go into a Gap in the US, it's probably very similar to a Gap in Canada because that's their brand. The Gaps all over the
mhm.
world are identical. So it is easy to make the mistake or to think, well, they're not that different. Um, from my perspective, what this triggered in me was kind of a feeling of, well, this could go on for quite a while. If Trump changes the terms of how long somebody could administer a country or be president of a country, it could go on until he dies. So, which knock on wood, but there's no guarantee. We never know. My mom's 94. I mean,
Mhm.
so the next thing I thought of, and I was on a coaching call with I coach novice editors in basically the ins and outs of running an editing business, pricing,
Mhm.
um, sort of setup, efficiencies, systems, that kind of stuff, but also mindset and other things like that. And one thing that I thought of when we were on this call yesterday was that I'm going to diversify my client base more. It's
Mm,
already international. I do work with writers from all over the world, Belgium, Ireland, Australia. So they're all English speaking because I read and write and edit in English, but they're based everywhere, Germany. So the thing I'm going to do is focus on not changing what I'm doing in the US in terms of the amount of engagement I already have with existing clients, but putting more energy into joining international associations, setting
mm,
my website up so that I might be capitalizing on the fact that Canadians know how to spell UK style and also US style. So
mhm.
somebody in the UK has written a book that they want to be in the American market. A Canadian is the perfect person to edit
Right.
that because we know the difference between the spelling
Yeah.
systems. Americans don't, and UK people don't
Mhm.
generally. I also have other things that this brought up, which is I do have goods. I don't personally stock them and send them over the border, but I sell books on Amazon.
Mhm.
One of them is a self-published book on a niche nonfiction book on what editing is, and another one are my infamous pleasure journals.
Yeah. Which we now need more than ever, Pat.
Go on. Yeah, I knew.
Um,
Oh, thank you. Yes, they're very pleasurable. Uh, anyway, so yeah, those are a bit of chump change, I'm not making a ton of money off those, but I was planning to really get on that and
Mhm.
change all my search engine stuff and redesign my covers. And now I'm like, well, maybe I'll actually want to look at print on demand outside the US. Uh,
Yeah.
expand other avenues of commerce really for myself. I'm gonna take another look at Redbubble and just because I believe it's US based and
Yeah,
just,
I know,
you
and
know,
that's for our merch, right? For
that's for the
the
gifted
gifted
underachievers merch.
underachievers.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with using a US based supplier, but if their costs go up to ship a t-shirt to Canada by 25%, they already charge 12 bucks shipping or whatever, which is kind
Yeah.
of ridiculous because it's free to ship in the US. But it's not ridiculous if their plant is in the southern US and they need to get a truck to drive it to Canada, then it's not ridiculous.
Right.
But if it's gonna have a bunch of tariffs, fees attached to it, then maybe I should set up something print on demand or merch site in every country where we wanna
Mhm.
sell merch because we have listeners in 35 countries.
Yes.
So that's my thinking. I'm just trying to expand my I studied history when I was a kid, and I've always been a total history geek. And I know things come and go if you look at the long form. And I also know that people who survive are the ones who can diversify and act before they need to.
Mhm.
And so that's what I plan to do is act before I need to, before it's an emergency. And I find out I can't have any US clients anymore. I don't expect that to happen, but just in case, I'm gonna start building another stream so that
Yeah.
5 years down the road, if all hell breaks loose, I'll be okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was Keynes specifically, the very famous economist, or just economists in general that say this, but in the long run, we're all dead.
Totally, totally.
So
Yeah,
what matters is what you're thinking about right now and how you're adjusting to conditions as they shift.
yeah,
And, the condition that is shifting is due to Donald Trump. The United States is no longer a reliable partner to anybody.
yeah,
And what you're saying, right, literally is I can't predict um, what this person in this country is going to do. So I have to really think about the right now because in the long run, we're all dead.
yeah,
And so it makes complete and perfect sense,
yeah.
right? Why wouldn't you do that? And from my perspective of inside the US as a creative, we're this big, huge, gigantic, wealthy nation.
Mhm,
So we'll probably be mostly fine-ish,
mhm,
depending. But it's not just this conversation, but it's just paying attention to the news. You can feel people turning, and you can feel a certain level of isolation
Mhm.
because we are no longer dependable. And we're not just dependable because Trump is undependable. We're undependable because we vote and elect people like him,
Yeah.
and and there's no sign that we're going to stop doing that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, whether Trump, becomes president for life, which I don't think that's a concern so
Mhm.
much, but that he creates this new condition, right? Which is something that Ronald Reagan did. He created this new condition that has endured.
Mhm.
And so does he create a new condition that endures and the US continues down this crazy path?
Yeah.
Or do we wake up and, do better things and, God bless Canada because you guys are setting a pretty cool example for us to want to live up to. But
Oh.
so as a creative in the US, I have a lot of international clients that I work with too, right?
Mhm.
Germany, UK, all over the place. And so is that is that work pathway or pipeline going to dry up?
Yeah.
I would think so. Who's going to want to work with us, right? The only thing that I could think of, and this is very publishing centric, is that we are a huge market. So if people in Europe and elsewhere want to enter the US market, maybe they're going to want to work with me
Mhm.
as a ghostwriter or developmental editor or helping them reach out to agents and publishers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe that's going to happen, but if it becomes too much of a liability, who knows how things are going to shift. And so, we talk about this understanding the context and the unfolding.
Yeah.
So the context is in a rapid state of shift. It is chaotic and unpredictable, and we do not know how it's going to unfold.
Mhm.
So, as creatives, who are attempting to make money off one, our just our work, which is the editing, for
Mhm.
both of us, but also potentially off the things that we produce creatively.
Yeah.
Um, we need to be aware that right now things are shifting, they're unpredictable, and it could go in a way that is very, very damaging to
Mhm.
us. It's hard to imagine that it's going to go in a way that all of a sudden we wake up into this really vibrant, creative world where everybody sees right now.
Yeah.
Maybe in 4 years, that's what's going to happen, because the people who need to have an epiphany and
Mm.
decide that they don't want to do what they've been doing,
Yeah.
and having it not work. That's what we can hope for.
Yeah.
Um, I have no guidance. I have no plan because it's all happening so fast, and even though you could say it's been very predictable, and it has. I mean, I'm not surprised at all by anything that's going on.
Mhm.
Uh, you just don't know how to. It's difficult for me to plan.
Yeah.
So if it's difficult for me to plan, it's difficult for everybody else. And especially if you're businesses that depend on being able to say, we understand the context and it's going to be a stable context so that
Yeah.
we can continue. And I'm talking about agents and publishers, but art gallery, I mean, everybody,
Mhm.
movie producers, everybody. There is so much uncertainty, and
Yeah.
you can see already creative people in the creative world kind of bending to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is or what to do, but I think you are absolutely smart. And I think you're not in the country that is people are trying to sort of navigate and move around and isolate
Mhm.
potentially.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation is going to be very interesting as it goes forward.
I think so too. And I'm happy to have the freedom to be able to say, well, I'm going to focus more of my, even memberships and profiles and things outside of the US. So in the UK, in Canada, in down under, any English speaking country, basically. And the other part is that I understand that will create um, its own kind of momentum and that things will never be the same again, even if in 4 years there's a miracle and all the American institutions that are holding the power and exercising it in the way they're exercising it have a total change of heart and manage to do the right thing. Once things have shifted, it's people need a really good reason to shift back. And so,
Mhm.
that's okay. I don't have a lot of I don't have a dog in the game really. I love my American friends and I love working with my American clients. But I can also see that anybody who's doing business with somebody in America has to really think about it. And I agree with you about publishing. American market is huge, and New York has
Mhm.
been the epicenter for editorial acquisitions and all kinds of, the publishing world really for decades, longer. But things change, and maybe these are large organizations that own the publishing houses, and if it's safer for them to be domiciled in Hamburg than in New York, they'll make that
Mhm.
happen. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so things are really, really uncertain in ways that I don't think we've really had a chance to understand yet.
Yeah. Well, Trump has certainly been very effective at creating different classes of people that we should hate.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's his gift.
so if you're going to publish their words and their message and their point of view and their experience,
Yeah.
or if you're going to create a movie about it, if you're going to create art, um, we may not reach like this point where you're just out and out banned,
Yeah.
but there's been so much pressure exerted on people, but via threat,
Hmm.
physical threat, as well as loss of economic well-being,
Yeah.
that those kinds of books and art and movies and what have you are going to not be created here, or not yeah, maybe not be created here. I don't know, and that's the thing, is you don't want to be extremist and alarmist and we're all going to die, but
No.
at the same time you really have to recognize that, yeah, people with brown skin are the people not to like.
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ community are the people not to like. um and when you create the whole classes of people who are suspect
Hmm.
and un-American, or unpatriotic,
Yeah.
then it really opens a lot of doors very quickly,
Yeah.
and they can open at a pace that is beyond people's ability to adjust and stand up to and deal with.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so although it might be safe to create a work there that goes against the sort of mandated point of view uh,
Hmm.
from the current administration, it might not be safe to shop it around there. It might not be
Right.
safe to publish it or, perform it there. So that's, then there ends up being a bit of a brain drain or something. Um,
Mhm.
but that's all in the future. We don't know what's gonna happen. Things could change. And so I guess all we can do is, for me, I can do a little bit in my purview. It's a long-term project. You don't just establish a presence in a different country overnight. Yes, the web is
Right.
international. Um, but, and yes, most of my work is I'm a completely remote worker, unless I teach in person here. So, it's a very flexible job in that consideration, and all I really sell are services and books. I don't really sell other stuff.
Mhm.
Merch, I forgot about merch. Uh,
Yeah.
but, it's a lot more difficult if you're in the belly of the beast and the beast is on the roam and you don't know where it's going. So,
Yeah, well, I hate to say it, I don't feel any less or more safe being in the US. I think if I was in Canada, I would feel very vulnerable. If I was in Germany, I'd feel very vulnerable. If I
yeah,
was really anywhere, because that we've got a lot of pull,
and
a
that
lot of gravitational force.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
saw what happened in 2007, 2008.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a superpower for nothing.
Right. So it's, yeah, it's a challenging time to navigate
Mhm.
as a
Mhm.
as just a human, but, as a creative, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that sobering thought, I guess, I'll go get my hat on so I can have tea with the queen. Oh, wait, she's dead, never mind.
I know. I know, I've got to do a lot of research. So is it chancellor in Germany, and then president in France? You
I
know.
mean, how do you ingratiate yourself with the Swedes? They're so Swedish. Ah,
So let's have some fun with it.
if possible.
Yes.
Oh my god, could be an experiment.
Ah,
Shut up.
we
Don't
have a new experiment.
pretend I didn't say that.
Nope, nope, it's out. Gonna be coming soon. Watch out.
Watch out.
Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. We're also available on Spotify, iTunes, Substack, and anywhere else you'd like to get your podcasts. Thanks so much, and have an awesome day.